In a previous video, I talked about what I miss about old games, so I want to go to the other side and talk about what I like about modern fighting games. So they definitely have their good sides and their bad sides. Today, let's be positive. So for starters, I definitely want to talk about netcode. That's probably the #1 thing. So a lot of these games here, Guilty Gear, Melty Blood, Blaze Blue now, Dragon Ball Fighter soon, Skullgirls now. Like a lot of these games have rollback netcode. Even like DNF up here has rollback netcode. For so many more people to be able to play fighting games together, I think is the most important thing. Without good netcode, you're kind of boned. It's either you have to pray that you play on PC and you can like lower the delay of the PC version so that like it makes the online a little bit more playable, or you have to find people to play with offline. That's how people used to do it back in the day. But just people being able to play the game is a good thing. And since we bullied the devs into putting rollback into every game, now everyone can play their game of choice, which is really nice. Then there's thing number 2. So we get the games at the same time. So really the standout one for me, I feel like, is Dragon Ball Fighters. That was like the first time I really felt like we got the games at the same time. So a very common question I get asked when I use older games for examples in videos is, why do I have the games in Japanese all the time? Do you speak Japanese? Do you read Japanese? Blah, 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 blah. Like, people always go into the language when I use games like Guilty Gear Xrd and stuff for examples. The main reason why I have these games in Japanese is because the games used to come out in Japan first. I actually talked about this in a video before, but in the past, at worst, your region may not ever get the game, or you might have to wait like a year or something before you get the game, while you're sitting there watching people in Japan have fun, which kind of sucked. By the time we get to this game, Xrd Revelator, I believe I got this like 3 months in advance, so it's not like a long time. And at the time, we were like, whoa, we're getting this game like really, really fast. But once we get to more modern day, like I can't actually speak for Street Fighter 5, but my first real experience with this was Dragon Ball Fighters. Now, basically the expectation is, yeah, the games come out everywhere at the same time. It's not just being able to play the game, it's also for the sake of competition. I think it makes it a lot better because that time matters. That's matches, talking, reviewing, tournaments. Like, if one region gets the game before the others, of course that region is going to be ahead and going to be considered the best region because they have such a huge head start. It's really, really hard to catch up with something like that. Then it's the IPs. So a lot of modern fighting games either are based off classic franchises that we're familiar with. So Strive is a pretty good example of that, right? Strive and Melty. Melty in the past was just kind of like a side game. If you know the lingo, it was a Dojin game, so it's like a fan-made game that one day ended up in arcades and slowly grew to the Melty Blood we all love today. And Guilty Gear, I mean, once upon a time, this was the Bill Clinton game. This is the game that Bill Clinton used to say video games are violent. Who remembers that drop, right? So we either get new versions of classic franchises, or we get brand new IPs. So of course, again, the standout in my head is Dragon Ball Fighters. When this game dropped, this game not only rocked the anime fighter scene in the traditional fighting game scene, but also every single fighting game community was impacted by the release of this game. This was a huge franchise to get a traditional fighting game and a 3 vs 3 fighting game in a time where there was basically a gap. There was like a need for a game like this. To a lesser extent, we have games like Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Depending on who's watching this, either you've never heard of this game or you are super aware of how much money this franchise makes, Grand Blue Fantasy. Personally, I sort of feel like they were guaranteeing getting extra money because the DLC would give you like a special code that you could use in the cell phone game. But this is a super powerful franchise in Japan compared to like US or Europe. And of course, more recently we have DNF Duel. Right, so DNF Duel is based off a pretty old game, Dungeon Fighter Online. I remember hearing about Dungeon Fighter Online in like 2010, 2011. So this game is based off that. So it's really cool that we get IPs based off all this stuff that we love to play fighting games. So for an example of what I mean on the other side of IPs, you may recognize this fighting game if you're really deep into fighting games and have a lot of knowledge of them. If you are not, you've probably never seen this game before, or maybe you've seen it in a meme. This is Arcana Heart 3. It is made by Examu. Rest in peace, Examu. I don't think they're making any games anymore. I think they disbanded. This is a fighting game with all girls. So every character is a girl and has very free-flowing movement. There's a lot of customization, actually. This game's actually like pretty deep, despite the aesthetics, whether or not you like the aesthetic of the game. But the main point is that what the fuck is Arcana Heart? Like not even being disrespectful. Like if you're just a traditional like Marvel loving, Netflix loving homie, and you see Arcana Heart for the first time, you don't recognize any of these characters. You're like, how did they make another game, let alone 3? Because this is Arcana Heart 3, right? So that means there's a 1 and a 2. You've never seen any of these characters. None of this means anything to you. So if the game, like the way the game plays and what the characters are doing doesn't appeal to you, you're basically like, whatever. Where I feel like, and I have elegantly said this, people will make concessions because it's an IP they like. So if there's some type of bullshit like loop or like infinite combo or something, it'll be way cooler if it's Batman or Rick and Morty doing it to you rather than Swimsuit Loli on a blob, aka Kira, right? If you're saying, hey, LK, you're punching down Arcana Heart, come on, that's super niche. How about BlazBlue? When BlazBlue came out, it was just a random series. Everyone's like, what is BlazBlue? Where's Guilty Gear? Why can't they make Guilty Gear anymore? Now, BlazBlue is a loved and respected franchise because the franchise is more than 10 years old. It shocks me to this day that BlazBlue is more than 10 years old now and has had many, many versions. But when the game came out, people were kind of just like, dude, fuck this BlazBlue game, dude. Like, what the fuck is this, right? So a big thing for me for this next one is I feel like there's just more emphasis on the neutral game in modern fighting games, at least the ones that I've played, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, and Guilty Gear Strive, Grand Blue Versus, as opposed to older fighters I've played. So this is kind of a back and forth argument. Depending on who you're talking to, this is either a good thing or a bad thing. I overall think it's a good thing. Reminder that no fighting game is perfect. Every fighting game is going to have some problems. It's just the nature of the genre, right? But overall, having a focus on more focus on neutral, I think is a good thing because I think that's the most engaging part of fighting games. I low-key kind of tune out when I hear somebody being like, yeah, this game is literally just not a complicated game because it doesn't have complicated combos, or like this, I can't do a complicated setup in this game or something. Because while the research part is cool, like I personally also like super digging into fighting games and exploring them. I also find the engagement of interacting with your opponent really fun too. So while sometimes it feels a little bit heavy-handed on the developer side, making sure like, hey, in these situations you have to do this, at the same time I like how they're trying to just make it so that both players are playing against each other, which I think is a good thing. So point number 5 for me is that bad characters are not bad anymore. So in older fighting games, there are definitely examples of characters that just like do not exist on the character select screen. There'd be too many lists between like games like BlazBlue, older versions of Guilty Gear, older versions of Melty Blood. I made some videos on characters that are like tragic, like BlazBlue CT Taker. In modern fighting games, while I shouldn't say weeks, I don't, but while people in the community might call characters literal, absolute, flaming hot garbage, the truth is, even the worst characters in the game can be played. Usually the most common problem with the game character-wise is not that like a character that is weak is too weak, is that the characters that are the strongest just do stuff better. In Dragon Ball, there have been so many examples for this. The classic, of course, we gotta go to Goku Black. So I actually don't know how Goku Black is eating this patch. However, basically from his release until I stopped, so he was in the launch roster of Dragon Ball FighterZ, so that means from 2018 to 2021, this character was always rated poorly in the game. However, constantly, especially when I started actually doing a lot of YouTube content, I'd always have people being like, yeah, you know, everyone says Goku Black sucks, but I always feel fine with him. Or like, look at this tournament player, he always does fine with Goku Black. Just a couple of examples of that in my region as well. And that, I think, is like a shining example. It's like people literally say he's garbage for years, and people still felt comfortable playing him. Where in an equivalent game, a touching story from my past, but in Melee, I used to play Roy, and he sucks. He's really, really bad. Like, he's really bad. Like, he's so bad. I remember specifically there was these twins I used to play with, and they played Samus and Bowser, right? One of them played Bowser. I remember one day, I played the Bowser twin on Yoshi's Story and Dreamland 64 back to back, and in the middle of the Dreamland 64 game, I just paused it. I was like, dude, Bowser beats Roy, right? Like for real. For real. Because this is when Roy was considered like a mid-tier, and he was like, Yeah, you know, I never just like you're good, but I never felt like I'm like struggling. Like, I just feel like you just outplay me or something. And from then on, I was like, yep, he's garbage. He's garbage. Has to be garbage. That's the first time I ever felt truly my character was absolute dog shit. Right. So one of the best things about modern fighting games is you don't have to worry about this. If you're not playing tournaments, you could really just play whatever you want. How tragic would it be? Another really good example of this game is Beerus, right? How tragic would it be that now we're getting games that are like based off IPs, like Multiverse just came out. Of course, Dragon Ball FighterZ is here. People are hoping, praying that they're gonna make another shonen anime franchise, Fighters, in the future. How tragic is that? Like, if it was more like classic fighting games that Beerus, so let's use Beerus because he was considered really bad in season 1. If he was like really like unplayable bad, the God of Destruction himself is like unplayable bad, that would just hurt. Like, Dragon Ball is supposed to be about like just everyone is fighting in space and stuff, right? So imagine if there was a patch where, let's use like Super Broly. His name, first of all, his name is Super Broly. There's a whole movie where they don't even beat him, right? And then you play him in the game and he's just like absolute dog. Like, it would just be really bad. I'm very glad they're very much paying attention to this, and as they keep making either fighting games based off IPs or fighting games that are based off legacy IPs that people want to be able to play their favorite characters. All right, so next, and second to last, one thing that's also nice is how characters are different without overwhelming new players. Or another way of putting it is like devs have been looking for clever ways of making the game accessible for people while also still having depth. So in my previous video where I talk about what I miss about old fighting games, one thing that I really like is how they make characters feel really unique, and I used BlazBlue's Overdrive as an example. Every character in BlazBlue has a different overdrive. Like, their overdrive has a different special effect. Some characters benefit from it a lot, some characters don't benefit from it so much, but they still get special combos, blah blah blah. In Dragon Ball, you have sparking. So sparking, everybody has sparking. All teams have sparking. You can use it when you have 3 characters, 2 characters, 1 character, and it lasts a different amount of time depending on how many characters you have left. So, despite all characters having the same tools in sparking, everyone can air dash cancel, even overheads. You can hold vanish, which enables new combo routing, new combos, and new setups in neutral. How you actually use these tools will depend on what character's out, what assists you have available. For Guilty or Strive, I think it would be positive bonus. So everyone has a chance to get positive. 99% of the time you'll see it because people break the wall, but how characters actually use positive bonus will be different. So for a character like Milia, if I get a successful throw, I get 50 meter basically immediately, which lets me do a 50-50 with her with either her instant overhead or low. So going a little further than that, I can use the fast RC change combined with positive. To continue my offense over and over and over again. Are there gaps? Yeah, I can vary what I do and make it really challenging for the opponent while having extremely high return if I'm correct. But for a character like Gio, you have some different options, right? So I'm starting from 0 here, so in a real match, it's going to vary how you begin, but the nature of positive bonus plus fast RC not costing any meter and not really having meter penalty means that you can do something like this. Eventually, you get to the point where your RC costs so little meter that you could just do this over and over and over if you have the timing. So how you apply these mechanics, these universal mechanics, are going to vary a lot depending on the character. Where in older games, your character's mechanic will be unique to you. However, of course, you're going to find a way to use it specifically for you. And then the last thing is going to be the spectator aspect. So while I like how classic fighting games don't have a lot of slowdowns, don't have a lot of things that literally make the game go slower so you see what's going on or whatever, modern games have a bunch of cleverly placed things that help people who either don't play the game or are new to the game enjoy watching the game or know when important things are happening. I hate to say it, but one of the most important ones in this game is the Bombaclot's counter, the massive counter. This thing got memed to death, but when you're watching the game and you see this message come up, you know the opponent is about to take a ton of damage. Another one is actually supers. I actually think Strive does a pretty good job of this. Dragon Ball Fighters is kind of a mixed bag. Some are like cool, some I think are just a pinch too long. So this is one you kind of have to be careful of. I actually got to play Street Fighter 6 at Evo. And I did find a couple characters, Ultras, I guess. They probably have an official name. I found them to be just a little bitty too much. Where I think GG Strive actually has just the right amount. Like, while this, for example, is clearly a cinematic, it is really reminiscent of her classic winger, and it doesn't take a lot of time. I've had friends watch offline runs of mine in person, like there with me, and they were able to follow along the gameplay perfectly, despite not knowing every single interaction in the game. So maybe they don't know that, like, oh, I don't get a combo off this most of the time, so this hit doesn't really matter, so I'm playing like really scared, and then my opponent can gamble on it because it's like minus on it. Maybe they don't know those details, but when they see Giovanna hit you with this move, they know, they'll go, oh snap, here we go, bullet time, right? So yeah, that's what I like about modern fighting games. Again, like I said at the beginning, fighting games aren't perfect, so there's stuff I like about modern fighting games, there's stuff I definitely don't like about modern fighting games, and there's stuff I like about classic fighting games that I actually miss that I wish they would include in newer games, but there's also stuff that could definitely stay in the old game. We kept it positive for these first two ones, so let's bring a little negativity with that. No, I'm not going to use that. Don't include that. As usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if y'all guys feel like it, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.